Hi, g'day, it's Roy from Sulphur City Foundry. What are we here today? It is the 2nd of January. Community has been absolutely buzzing from obviously The Mandalorian and Rise of Skywalker. So it's been a busy time for sabers. Everyone's really interested in getting them fixed, getting them upgraded, or picking up a new one. So I'm playing a little bit of catch up today, just with a couple of stunt installs on the bench. So I thought this would be a really good time to sit down, shoot a video, and actually show you how to pop together a stunt installation. Now it's actually quite a basic install. It's essentially a simple LED torch circuit, which is a light source, a switch, and a power source, which is your 18650 battery. So I'm just going to take you through how to put one of these together. I've done a little bit of pre-assembly and pre-tinning, so the video is going to be nice and short for you. So this will just show you how easy it is to pop one of these stunts together. If you're looking at getting into building your own sabers, then stunts are pretty much where you want to start if you're not overly confident with your soldering, and basically build your skills up from there. If you can put a basic stunt build together without blowing anything up, you haven't done too badly, and then you can maybe start looking at a sound install in the future. Beauty with a stunt install, there's not anything overly expensive for you to actually break if you do something wrong. Okay, so what have we got here? We have our heatsink assembly, which sits at this end of the saber, together with we're just using a single 3-watt red Cree LED today. Wiring we're using is 26 AWG gauge. This stuff is originally from the custom saber shop that we import and use here. A really nice wire. We've tried probably half a dozen different wire sources, and this is the stuff that gives consistently good results. Down at this end we just have a 18650 battery holder, in which the 18650 battery or cell will get inserted. One thing to note with these are an insanely tight fit. We only use protected cells on our installations here at Sulphur City Foundry. I advise you to do the same. There's a little PCB circuit in there that prevents overheating, over discharge, or overcharging, because these lithium-ion cells can be a little bit volatile sometimes. So that protection circuit is a real bonus. But one thing to note, it is quite a snug fit popping these cells in the battery holder. Okay, so we will kick off today just by seeing what I've done so far with the LED assembly. So we have the 3-watt LED there, which I have soldered the positive and negative wires onto. Okay, that is in turn just popped on the copper heatsink there just by using some thermal paste. This is computer thermal paste that you normally use to get a good thermal contact between your processor and the motherboard, and the heatsink, and that's exactly what we're using it for here with the LED. Okay, so to assemble this, we're just basically going to pop the LED module on the copper base. Good thing with these Saber Trio bases is they have holes which pretty much go out to the outside of the copper heatsink, which actually makes playing around with the wires a little bit easier. Okay, so we're just going to place the lens on top, throw on the exterior heatsink, and just screw that on. There we go. Now you're going to want to tighten that up a little bit. So to tighten these, you can either use an Allen key down the middle on these Saber Trio modules. I can never find mine, so I actually use my circlip tool. And if you go and check out another video on the channel, you'll see I shot a video probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, which just overviewed some of the tools of the trade that you need to get in your toolbox when you're getting ready to install your first saber. So make sure you go through your shed and dig them out ahead of time. Okay, so what I use this circlip tool for, you're probably unlikely to have one of these, so I use an Allen key instead. I just pop those into a couple of spare slots on the heatsink and use that to give that a good tighten. Okay, if you're really super anal, you can put something called thread lock or blue Loctite just around the threads there. Check with blue Loctite actually to make sure it will take the heat generated by this. If not, just search out a heat resistant equivalent. I never use the stuff because I find just a snug little nip with the circlip tool keeps that thing together quite nicely. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is put on the resistor. Unlike a normal light bulb, LEDs are a semiconductor. They so you have to kind of limit the current going through the LED module itself, and you do that by using a resistor. Now resistors will vary depending on what color LED you use. We have a handy resistor calculator over at sulphurcityfoundry.co.nz. If you go into the product section, you'll see a big list, a big menu down the right hand side of your screen. Towards the bottom of there you will find the LED calculator. So go and use that to make sure you have the right rated resistors for the job. Okay, so first things first, I will pop on my heat shrink, color coded because I'm anal like that. Then I will go and get my resistor. So that's a 3-watt resistor. It's with red LEDs, it's pretty much running at the limit, so they're going to get quite hot. I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so with your resistor you'll get these, and there'll be a long wire coming off each side of the resistor. I snip that wire and actually just hook the wire over into like a little loop. Now the reason I do that is trying to get solder to adhere to these aluminium or steel, whatever they are, strands on the resistors is notoriously twitchy. I put a little loop on there and they actually take the solder really nicely. You can see it, there's a little blob that's adhered on there. Okay, so this is the one I'm going to be using, all pre-tinned. Remember, with my heat shrink already on, I'm just going to go in and solder these together. So I'm need to pre-tin this wire. Little bit of solder just on that wire. So as I'm coming into the resistor, I'm popping the wire on top of the iron, just as I'm hitting that bottom one, heating both components up at the same time and bringing them together, letting them quickly cool for a nice strong join. You can test the join, make sure we've got no strand wires coming off, and it's nice and thick. You don't need lots of solder. If you've got heaps of solder on your joins, that's actually quite a bad join. You really do not need a lot of solder to pop these joins on. So I'm now coming in and popping in my heat shrink. Just basically protects the exposed joints. So I double heat shrink mine, so I use 2 different grades of heat shrink. It makes for a stronger join around the resistor. So I'm going to slip on the first narrow piece of heat shrink and I'm going to shrink that on 1 sec. Easiest thing to shrink that on, just go and get a lighter, hold it about 3-4 inches underneath the heat shrink and you'll see it actually shrink onto the wire and the joint. Then put in your larger piece of heat shrink over the top, 1 size bigger, shrink that on. And what you'll actually find is that makes for a slightly more robust bit of support around your joint now. Just gonna bring that in a little bit more. Okay. So, be a tidy kiwi. I coil on my wires. Okay, and before I forget, I'm going to put the other end of the wire just on the other end of that resistor. Bum, bum, bum. So I'm trying to keep this video as quick as possible, so you don't have to chug through hours of footage while trying to get all the tips in there as well. So I'm just going to pre-tin that. Don't have to go in with a heat shrink because I can just hook that on the end, so I don't have the LED module to contend with. There we go, nice strong join. Put on your narrow heat shrink all the way to the end. Probably shouldn't have a fan in my office because that's blowing the flame around a bit. And then a slightly larger diameter heat shrink goes on top of that. Normally it takes about an hour to wire a Stunt Saber, so I'm trying to squeeze that down a little bit. And certainly I won't show you all of the finishing stuff I do because it's actually quite fiddly. I'll just cover the basics. Okay, so I'd like to be able to get the heatsink module out the end of the saber with the switch still in place, so I actually just wire a length like that onto my saber, and there's my negative that's going to run down to the battery pack. Heatsink module is going to sit about here. Yep, about that. So you don't want to coil too far because this is going to loop back onto the switch there. Okay, so time to drop that. I'll straighten this wire out. You can hear some music in the background. If you go and check my channel, I've actually got a playlist on there called Music to Install Sabers To. You've heard a few tracks chug away at the moment. This is one by Lemon Jelly called Rambling Man. Music keeps me sane. Alright. So I'm just gonna shove that negative wire. Doesn't really matter where you put your resistor as long as it's in the circuit somewhere. I like to keep one full wire running from the LED module down to the battery pack. That's just me. There we go. Okay, so LED module is in, and you can just see the red wire there, and that black one, it has fallen at the end there. So I'm just going to go and get another handy tool. Like I said, you will see this in that video I made. Just one second. There we go. So make sure you go on eBay or your local $2 shop, dollar store. Pick up one of these dental picks. You can get them in packs of 4. They've got different orientations on them. Really good for getting hooking wires through 12mm holes. Okay. Now what I'd normally do with this cell would be to actually solder this first and pass it down the bottom of the hilt, but I've just pre-soldered this joint just to save a bit of time. So what I'm actually going to do is just come up this way instead. Or straighten your wires, it makes for an easier life. This is why you can see. Now you can see why I normally pass the wires the other way around. Because there's an annoying little ridge down this way. So trying to make this a quicker process. Looks as though it's going to take longer. Never mind. There we go. Okay, so there's the second wire. Get your dental pick. Pull it through. Right, so essential tool, wire strippers. Just going to strip that wire. Don't use your teeth, makes for a really messy end to your wires. And once you've stripped, just try and twist those stray wires together. Again, makes for tidy joints, reduces the risk of stray strands or accidentally shorting out terminals. Okay, so what we've got here are our basic latching switches. So I use recess switches, which when a switch is activated, the button sits in. These are way better than kind of the standing latching switches you get from Saber Forge or whatever. Always make sure you try and get a recessed latching switch on your saber. It will save you from accidentally turning off your saber while you're dueling. Okay, so now it's time to wire up the switch. I will do that using my handy dollar shop clips. You buy these in packs of 3 for about $2 New Zealand or $1.50 or US. They come with little orange tabs on the end. First thing you do is rip those things off. Makes these things a lot more useful, mainly because you can use them to grip your switch like that. Okay, they are quite light. Weigh it down with another heavy tool. What I'm doing now is just pre-tinning the end of my wires. Cool, all ready to solder. Quick note, the tabs on the switch normally come like this. I've actually trimmed them down in half, and you'll see why at the moment. They're pre-tinned, so there's a bit of solder on there at the moment. You can solder the wires directly on linearly if you want to, but note they will protrude a little bit more into the hilt. I'm used to soldering these compact little saber forge hilts, so I try and save as much space as possible. So what I do with my switches is I come along and lay the wires next to those pre-tin tabs. It's actually the saber forge method of soldering switches. And I soldered them flat on, just like that. Okay, then what I'll do, I'll actually either put some putty or some hot glue on top just to insulate those electrically. What I'm just going to do is just take off any pointy bits of solder, so that is nice and flat. Little twist, just for fun and games. Okay. So that's the switch in. LED module is all wired up. I said I pre-wired that, which is saves a little bit of time. Pre-solder that onto the battery holder down here. Okay, so what I'm doing now is going to twist up some of these wires. Not only does it make it look a little bit tidier, people like twisted stuff. Twisted wires, by the way, it's more if you're transmitting data, that's where twisted pairs come from in network cables and stuff. It actually makes very little difference whether you twist these things or not, but one thing you will find with a bit of a pre-twist on the wiring, when you come to push the battery pack in, if you start twisting the pack to get it in, to start these wires coiling out the way, you'll actually notice with that pre-twist on there, it will do a slightly tidier job of twisting in. Okay, let's cut this to size. In. Snip it to length. Music wise, we've got Laura Marling All My Rage. I do like female vocalists, and Laura Marling comes from Ireland, so you can obviously hear the Gaelic twist on there. Okay, so let's come in. Always pre-tin your wires, never take a clean wire into a joint. There we go. This tab is pre-tinned as well, so in I go, and get some weight on that, stop it rocking around. Okay, just hold that in place while it sets. If you're doing this for the first time, you might want to get something called helping hands. Yes, I use these little plastic clips in lieu of those for a lot of keeping stuff together while I solder it. Helping hands are like those crocodile clips you get that come with your solder stations and stuff. Okay, so what we have here is a completed circuit. Now I'm not going to tidy this up in front of you because it's actually fiddly, and probably half the install time is spent just adding Velcro. What I'll do, I'll do that, and I'll just add a short video clip to the end and just talk you through it. Okay, but what we have, I should have charged this battery first. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Let me try this one. This one's fully charged, but it's not protected, so let's just use this anyway. In goes your cell. Make sure it's seated, and what we have there is a working lightsaber stunt. And you can see with the recess, it's pretty much impossible to accidentally turn that off while you're using it. Whereas standard cells, you might run into a bit of issue. Music wise, we've got the Dead South and Hell I'll Be in Good Company. This was pretty popular on Facebook. It's about 6 months ago. It was shared. This one's got 166 million views. So you've probably seen this thing already. If not, they do. They're kind of a popular bluegrass group for the masses. They're quite fun. Okay, so that is your basic torch circuit. That's pretty much just how easy it is to do. You would have seen the color coding. Red goes up one side through the switch and through the resistor, and then black is just a straight wire down to my battery holder. There's variations on that. You can put the resistor on the black wire. You can put the resistor basically anywhere in the circuit. It's not going to make any difference to the circuit itself. Yeah, find what works for you. But that's certainly how we do things here at Sulphur City Foundry. And like I said, I'll show you the tidy version in a minute. But essentially what happens there is that pops into the hilt, and we're ready to go. Okay, I'll be back in a few seconds with some different music and a slightly tidier install, and that'll be it. Okay, see you in about 3, 2, 1, and we're back. Right, so what do we have? Music wise, we have Kamasi Washington with Street Fighter Mass. Pop that up a little bit. A really good track. So you should be able to hear me over it. So one thing I forgot to mention when I was putting on the heat shrink, normally I'd actually put on a third bit of heat shrink which goes over the resistor. The reason I do this is just because it stops the resistor tinging against the body. It's only a really subtle little thing that I like to do. But as I mentioned, when you're running a red LED, those resistors are actually running pretty close to the limit, so they might be running a little bit warm. So I like to actually just let them air and let them radiate their heat away so they don't cook. You can cook resistors and they start falling apart. It's not pretty, so I err on the side of caution. You mainly get it with the dual dye red LEDs. Single LED's not going to get overly hot, but hey, that's just something that I personally do. Right, so saber's assembled, heatsink is pushed in and secured with the retaining screw. The switch is now set into the body. I will show you how to set the switch into the body, but because I'm just going to pop in a little blank plate in that second hole there. So what do I use? Well, sabersmiths probably use a good few different techniques, but this is one that came up on a sabersmith forum that I thought was pretty cool, and it uses just bog standard super glue. So what I've got here is just a few drops of super glue that I've let sit and evaporate for a few minutes, just so it starts thickening up. Thing you have to watch with super glue is if you've ever seen you've glued something and you get that kind of that white fog around it, that's from the vapors evaporating off the glue. So you kind of want that to thicken up a little bit first before you use it to glue in your switches and your blanking plates. Once you've, well, I'm just going to do that now. I've done that already with the switch, and I've located all the wires. I've got my little dental pick from my pack that I bought, and I'm just using that to literally just wet the top areas of the hilt recess. And there we go, in it goes. And I'm just going to let that glue. So talking about glue vapors, if you do start to notice white fogging coming up around the outside of the switch, nip it in the bud quickly by making sure you've got some acetone or nail polish remover on hand. That's a non-acetone version. It's pretty good. Does kind of the same thing. Get a Q-tip, wet it with some acetone, form it so it's pointy, so it gets in all the crevices around that switch, and just run it around the switch and take off that fogging as soon as you can. Saves it settling in and making your switch area look a bit messy. If you don't get it in time, quick fix for that is go and check my other video about how to remove switches. Pop the switch out, and you have to literally shave the white foggy bits off from around the switch area. You can do that. It's relatively safe if you kind of shave the area, don't stab it, because the black anodizing in those recesses shouldn't come off when you're kind of shaving it with an X-Acto knife or something like that. So just get the blade and just slowly scrape those white deposits off. But I'm not getting any on either of those. Like I said, I let the stuff, got some dust, let the stuff thicken up a little bit first. So that has just settled in quite nicely. Okay, so let's get back to the cell area. So what I've done there, first thing I've done is pop some ribbon on the battery holder. The reason you do that is because it makes it easier to get your cell out. So bane of my life is trying to dig cells out of these protected cells out of these tight battery holders. So if you hot glue a little bit of ribbon and sit that under the cell, you can actually use that just to pull out your battery. Okay, right, you obviously want to stop this thing from rattling around. So on the bottom of your cell holder, apply some of the fluffy side of Velcro strip. You might need to trim the sides a little bit just to make it tidy, but pop some Velcro strip on the bottom of your battery holder. Then cut another bit to length. This one's double-sided, so hooky one side, fluffy the other. Always try and keep your fluffy sides out. It just makes sliding it in and out of your saber a little bit easier. So fold over your ribbon and put a wrap of Velcro around your battery pack. Okay. What that does, it stops it rattling around inside the hilt. Now that's going to sit in there quite snugly. Sometimes it might be a little bit of a pain to get out, so what I also do is add a hooky bit of Velcro on the bottom of the fluffy Velcro, Okay, so what I've got there is essentially it's a tab for pulling out the battery pack. So I'll just go and fit the battery pack just by rotating it in to coil those wires, push it in, and also it acts like a bit like a spring. It stops the thing rattling around again. Fold it in, screw on your pommel. No real rattle on the electronics in the hilt. Now to get everything out, I'll screw your pommel, I'll locate that tab rather than trying to shake the battery out. Just pull it and out she comes. Easy as that. Then to remove your battery for charging, pop off your Velcro, pull out your ribbon, and you're all ready to go. Makes life a lot easier, and that's just some of the little touches that we put onto our basic stunt installs here at Sulphur City Foundry. In fact, I'm just going to line it up a bit better. There we go. There are other stunt configurations that you can do. One, we use momentary to latching converters a fair bit. They're quite popular with the guys down here in New Zealand. My personal favourites is actually installing the cell within the chassis and then installing a recharge port into the Saber as well, but it's still a stunt, and you can do that. And then you just use a in-hilt charger just to plug everything up. So that's really cool. If you've got a sound saber already and you just need a stunt for a spare, save having to buy a second charger, invest the money instead into a chassis install, and then you can just use the same charger to charge your saber. Okay, but there we are. That is one saber all done. Okay, your first install will probably take you about 5 or 6 hours. Everyone's does. But once you get good at this, basic stunt installs like this take about an hour, which is why we only charge 60 New Zealand dollars in labour, which is probably one of the cheapest on the market. And then we have a tidy install. In goes the kill key, and that is everything wrapped up and ready to go. So let's say if you're wanting to try your first install, come back to us with any questions. We can certainly help with getting your parts together, but it's pretty much what you just saw there on the bench. So heatsink, LED, 28 AWG wiring, a latching switch, a battery holder, and a battery. The other stuff, other tools you can pick up from the local dollar stores, Velcro from the dollar store, or your local sort of furnishing and material supplier. Obviously get yourself a soldering iron and go and check out the other video for all the other tools that you need for installing your first saber. But yeah, hope that certainly helped. Let's say if you like what you do and you still don't want to install your saber, give us a call. We're happy to install. We ship our installs worldwide. If you're getting a stunt install like this, what we'll actually do is ship it without the battery. It actually makes for quite cheaper shipping. So you're paying about 35 New Zealand dollars, which is what, about 22 US I think. So that plus a relatively cost-effective install is probably might even work out a little bit cheaper than your local smiths. So yeah, feel free to go and contact us down here in Diddleload, New Zealand. What we also do, we get in our regular Saber Forge shipments, so we normally have hilts in stock ready to go. So we turn around our installations normally within 72 hours. So that is a fast option for you if you want an installation using any board that we have in stock into your Saber Forge and to your doorstep relatively quickly. Okay, so have fun. Okay, any questions, pop them in the video below. Hope you enjoyed the music. We're going to be playing out here with Battles, the Yabba. It's a bunch of middle-aged guys that surprisingly came together to make quite an interesting music ensemble, and one of my favourites from Canada, I think. Okay, have fun. Bye bye. Enjoy your sabers.